Well, my name is Hugh and I'm with the United Federation of Korea. But when I saw this movie, The Lottery, and I saw how they, instead of just discreetly, with dignity, notifying these students that they're going to these charter schools, they rounded them all up in this armory and made it look like the Democratic Convention and shouted their names out and pranced them on stage like it was some kind of an antebellum auction in the Deep South. You know, that I have a problem with. I have a big problem with that. And if all I want is for people to look at that movie, and when you see that, you will feel sick to the stomach. And it's exploitation and it's total disrespect to do something like that. And if you watch that movie, you'll see that is. See, the movie, if everybody watches it, it will backfire because it's propaganda for the charter schools. But if people see it with a conscientious and a discerning eye, they will see how the African Americans are being exploited.
Okay, I've been, you know, for the most part, charter schools are being promoted in communities.
I know that.
Communities for poor people of color.
I know that.
Okay. I've been covering the charter schools for a couple of years now. I've covered a couple of conventions on it, City College and everything else. You know? And I'm really conflicted about this because I have no love for the teachers union. You know, I think that we can attribute a lot of the failures in the public school system. We definitely contributed to that because we have what essentially is a teachers union that's not representative of the populations that they serve. You know, I'm talking about our schools here are predominantly in communities of color. The student body is predominantly African American and Latino, and the teachers union was 90% Jewish. You understand? Now they set out specifically to dominate this institution at the turn of the 19th century, turned into the 20th century. So, and our failures, you know, for the most part, they wanted to track us to vocational training, away from academic achievement, and
that's another form of oppression.
Yeah, that was another form of oppression. So now, when I see this charter school initiative come along, I'm kind of conflicted about going with it because look, both sides of the equation. Charter schools and public schools, both of them are suspect to me. I'm trying to figure out, you know, what's good for my community.
You have to look at the genesis of both situations. And the genesis of charter schools are people like Bloomberg, Klein, Gates, people who all they want to do is just siphon all the wealth out of the middle class. And they're doing it because they're getting their foot in the door with these charter schools, and they're promoting non-union schools. And they are taking tax money and giving it to private industry, and they're masquerading that, and they are funneling all this tax money, your money and my money, back into private business, which is no accountability. And
so this is like the privatization of education,
which is a big problem. Yeah. Then you're talking tyranny when you have privatization of education. Because first, I think that the variable that has been introduced in the last few years now is that the only way you can have a democracy at all is to keep your union strong. Because these elections, they don't mean anything anymore. You can fix an election now because of computers. The more power you have.
But what's the alternative? I mean, what's the alternative for the citizen out here? I mean, you telling them not to vote?
No. The alternative is to keep the union strong and don't let those charter schools take over. Because once they do, then the unions will all fold, and then you will have no representation. And the big companies and the cyber billionaires will just take over the entire country and then the world.
Well, the attack on the unions has been going on, man, since the 60s. You know,
right,
they began to move all industry from the north to the south, which was non-union, and then from non-union states in the south, they began to move it overseas.
Right, but it was pretty much of a deadlock then, but it's not a deadlock anymore because of the computer variable where you can just set up a candidate who looks good and suits your purpose and have him win. Like, do you notice that ever since when President Obama got to be president, just at the right time to pass this charter school initiative? Because if he endorses it, of course, they're going to say an African American endorses it, must be the right thing to do.
Okay, I can see that. I mean, I see. We have no real difference of opinion about who this is going to benefit. Okay, but clearly, the public school system is not functional. I mean, for the vast majority of people of color going through the public school systems, people that come from the Harlems of America, and that children are engaged in the public school system. I mean, we have a huge failure rate, and the failure rate results in children dropping out of school, dropping into the underground economy, and then up in the criminal justice system. We have more black males right now in prison than we had in slavery in 1850. And the majority of those people that you find in prison were products of the public school system. They were failures. You know what I'm saying? They dropped out of school.
Don't you think that racial profiling has something to do with it also?
I believe that also, absolutely. I think the whole thing is racial.
And don't you think that charter schools add to racial profiling? Like, for instance, a cop sees some kids in charter school uniforms, he's going to leave them alone, as opposed to some African Americans who are wearing regular urban wear. He's going to go up to them and search them. And
that brings me back to my original question. If the charter schools have a model that works, what's to stop the public school system from replicating that in the public? Listen, and the dress code, okay, which plays a very important part in eliminating some of the dysfunctions that we experience in the public school system.
Well, what it comes down to, for you and for me, is it comes down to liberty for all of us. We want to have our rights. We don't want to have to be subject to all these super rich billionaires and lose our liberty to these people. And if you go see that movie, The Lottery, it will help you to distinguish what side you're on more clearly.
I'm searching, and I appreciate your time and your effort, man.
Because I was out on these streets before, and I just said, well, I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. But when this movie came out and I saw it, I said, this is what I need, because I can go and convince people to see this movie and let them make up their own minds. Because remember, the movie is a pro-charter school movie, but it's such propaganda that it backfires.
Okay, man. I mean, it's been a pleasure. What's your name again?
Hugh Power.
Hugh Power.
Your name, sir?
Jans Hay.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. That was a very interesting discussion with Hugh, and this charter school issue is a major issue in communities of color all across this country, but specifically here in New York. And we will, all things Harlem, will be seeking out people to shed as much light on this as possible. And we thank you for your patience and time. And we hope that you gather something out of Hugh's support and his position of opposing charter school. Thank you. All things Harlem.